These are the Amazon Basics 80-watt bookshelf speakers. In this video, I'm going to tell you if these $50 to $350 speakers are any good. Yes, $50 to $350. I'll get into it. One of the last things I wanted to get last year to complete my desk setup was a nice pair of studio monitor speakers. Now I was looking into some brands like Edifier, PreSonus, and Mackie. The speakers I was looking into getting had an output of 450 watts of total power and around $100. So how did I end up with such large speakers with an output of around 80 watts price? My name is Patrick and this is Everyday Tech for everyday people. This is a short review of the Amazon Basics 80-watt bookshelf speakers. Now I'll get into price in just a moment, but first let me take you on a tour around these speakers and give you my opinion on how they sound. I will say up front that I'm not an audiophile, but I just wanted a pair of speakers that have a clean sound even at higher volumes. So first, a quick look at the actual speakers themselves. These are very large speakers measuring in at about 13.5 inches tall. Each speaker weighs about 11 to 12 pounds. Now the speaker enclosure or the case has this nice wooden brown finish here with black accents, which goes very well with my desk here. And then each on the front, you have two drivers. You have a 5¼ inch bass driver and you have a 1-inch treble driver there. Now on the back, you have a number of knobs and sockets here and buttons here to control the volume, put it on standby, and to change the input selection as well. Now speaking of input selections, you have the 3.5 millimeter jack here, you have the optical socket here, and then you can also connect this via Bluetooth 5.0. So how do these speakers sound? I would say they sound pretty good. Again, I'm not an audiophile, but music and spoken audio are very clear. Now the sound seems to be very well balanced, but if you're looking for something with a lot of bass, you probably should look somewhere else. There's not even a connector for a subwoofer. Now, I have not really tried to blast these speakers at full volume, nor am I going to try because I have just way too many people in this house and I share too many walls with neighbors. But I have on occasion pushed these speakers a little bit and they are quite clear and crisp. So let me get into two main annoyances I have with these speakers. First, these speakers are impractical to use without the remote control. Not impossible, but impractical. Now with the remote control, you can turn these speakers on and off, put it on standby, change the input, adjust not only the overall volume, but you can also adjust the levels of the treble and bass separately. Now without the remote, you can do most of these functions, but all the knobs and the buttons are on the back. So it makes using those buttons very impractical. For me, I have to have the remote. I have to make sure the remote is on my desk and accessible. I wish they at least put the power button or the standby button on the front. I rarely have to do adjustments on the other settings, and on the volume control, I usually adjust the system volume. The last and biggest annoyance for me is how these speakers go into an inactive mode when what is playing is soft or low in volume. So let me explain. When you first turn on these speakers, you can hear a very faint white noise. It's like what you hear when a microphone picks up the sound of a fan, like the fan from my video light here, or the AC blowing in the background. Then a few seconds later, it goes away because it's not detecting any audio coming through. Then when you start to play something, let's say you're playing another YouTube video, it takes about a half a second to a second to activate. Then you can hear something, meaning you might have missed the beginning part of that video. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but it can get very annoying. But it doesn't stop there. If what you're playing goes into a quiet portion, let's say there's a quiet bridge portion in a song, or and your volume is too low. Let's say there's people talking, there's a conversation going on, and there's a bit of a pause in the conversation. It can go into this inactive mode just because the output is a little bit lower. Then there's that half a second and a second delay to activate again once the levels get above a certain threshold. It gets really annoying. The only way to combat that is to increase the volume, and sometimes I can't do that, so it forces me to put on my headphones or AirPods. In other words, these speakers are not for soft music or even spoken content with some breaks in it or pauses in there. For the most part, in most situations, this has not been an issue. And if you're in an environment where you don't have to worry about bothering other people around you, then these speakers are great. But especially if you play music or podcast in the background, especially if you put it at lower volumes, you might want to pass on these speakers here. Now, I haven't found a way to prevent this from happening. There doesn't seem to be a setting where you can prevent the speakers from going into that inactive state. Lastly, let's talk about the elephant in the room, price. If you look these up on Amazon right now, as of this recording, it's listing around $350. Again, why did I decide to get these speakers? Price. I was in the market for some speakers at the time, and one day I was browsing on techbargains.com, and these came up as a deal for $50. The specs seemed too good for the price, and I pulled the trigger on them. Well, what happened after that sale? The price of these slowly went up and up, week after week. Even now, if you look at some of the questions and reviews on Amazon, people are talking about the price. At some point, it jumped from $150 to $300 plus. I just don't understand why, and I don't even have theories on it either. Well, what would I pay for speakers like this? One person said on their Amazon review that they would have paid $120. Knowing what I know now about these speakers, and especially for my needs, I would say the upper limit for me would be about $100. Now, there are other speakers for more reputable audio companies that have better options, and at least for my needs and at that price point, those would have been better options. Also, for those speakers, they would have been more compact because these speakers are huge. Luckily, I have a desktop to put them on. Sure, I probably wouldn't have been able to find 80-watt speakers at that price point, but again, for my needs, 80 watts is overkill for me. Again, I got these because they were $50 plus tax at the time. But overall, I'm very happy with these speakers, especially for the price that I got them at. I've learned to live with those few annoyances, but overall, these speakers have performed very well. Now, would I recommend them to you? Not at a $350, but if they ever go on sale again, especially if they fall below that $100 price point, I would definitely recommend them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. Consider subscribing. Until the next one, see ya.